My husband's affair partner is pregnant, and he's planning to fake his own death to escape both families. I'm Melissa, 34 years old, and I found this out in the stupidest possible way, through a pocket dial. A goddamn pocket dial. Let me back up for just a second. My husband Derek and I have been married for 8 years, 2 kids, a mortgage, the whole suburban dream package. He's a financial advisor. I'm a nurse at the local hospital. We're the couple that everyone thinks has it all figured out, except we don't. 3 weeks ago, Derek's phone called me at 2 a.m. I was working a night shift, standing at the nurse's station, and his name popped up on my screen. I figured he butt-dialed me in his sleep or something. I almost didn't answer, but I did, and I heard him talking to someone, a woman. Her voice was high-pitched, nervous. She kept saying something about when you disappear, and the insurance money, and our baby. I stood there in that fluorescent-lit hallway, my hand shaking, listening to my husband plan his exit strategy from our life like it was just another financial portfolio to liquidate. The woman's name was Amber. Of course it was. She worked at the gym Derek joined 6 months ago. The one he suddenly became obsessed with. The one where he spent 4 evenings a week getting healthy. I didn't hang up. I recorded every word. 23 minutes of my husband and his pregnant girlfriend discussing how he'd stage a kayaking accident, how he'd leave his kayak overturned in the river, how he'd already purchased fake documents, how they'd start over in Costa Rica. 23 minutes of my world ending in real time while I pretended to chart patient vitals. When I got home that morning, Derek was making pancakes. Pancakes. Like he was father of the year. Our daughters, Emma and Riley, were sitting at the table in their matching unicorn pajamas, giggling about something on Riley's iPad. He kissed my forehead, asked me how my shift was. I said fine. I didn't confront him. Not then. Because here's what they don't tell you about betrayal. Sometimes you need to know everything before you burn it all down. Sometimes you need to be smarter than the person trying to destroy you. So I became a detective in my own marriage. I started tracking his phone. I know his passwords. He never changed them because he never thought I'd look. I created a fake Facebook profile and friend requested Amber. She accepted within an hour. Her profile was private, but her about section said fitness coach and living my best life. Her best life apparently involved stealing someone else's husband. I went through our bank statements. Derek had been moving money. Small amounts at first, 500 here, 1,000 there. Never enough to trigger alerts. But over 6 months, he'd siphoned off nearly $80,000 into accounts I didn't know existed. $80,000 from our savings, from our kids' college funds, from the emergency fund we'd built for things like hospital bills or job loss, not for faking his own death and starting a new family in Central America. I found the life insurance policy he'd taken out 3 months ago. $2 million. He'd told me it was through work, a standard benefit increase. I'd signed the papers without reading them because I trusted him. $2 million that would pay out if he died in an accident. The rage I felt was ice cold, not hot, not explosive. It was the kind of anger that calculates and plans and waits for the perfect moment. I called my brother Jason. He's a private investigator in Chicago. I didn't tell him everything at first, just that I needed help looking into Derek's activities. Jason didn't ask questions. He just said he'd help. Within a week, Jason had everything. Photos of Derek and Amber together, receipts from a fertility clinic, text messages about baby names, a lease agreement for an apartment in San Jose under fake names. He'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. The kayaking accident was scheduled for this coming Saturday, 4 days away. Derek had already told me he was going on a guy's weekend camping trip. He'd shown me the reservation confirmation for a cabin upstate. Another lie stacked on top of lies. I sat in my car outside the hospital after my shift, staring at the evidence Jason had compiled, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to stop Derek from faking his death. I was going to let him do it, and then I was going to make sure he stayed dead. Not literally, of course, but legally, financially, socially, in every way that mattered. I called my friend Rebecca. She's a lawyer who specializes in family law. We met for coffee that afternoon, and I laid out everything. The affair, the pregnancy, the fake death plan, the insurance fraud. Rebecca's eyes got wider with every detail. Melissa, she said, stirring her latte with a trembling hand. This is insane. You need to go to the police. Not yet, I said. I need you to help me protect my kids first. I need to make sure that when this blows up, Emma and Riley don't lose everything. Rebecca made some calls. By the end of the day, I had a team. A forensic accountant who could trace Derek's money movements. A criminal attorney who specialized in fraud cases. A financial advisor who could help me secure assets. I wasn't just going to survive this. I was going to win. That night at dinner, Derek talked about his camping trip. He was so animated, so excited. He even hugged the girls extra long before bed, and I watched him tuck them in, kissing their foreheads, telling them he loved them, knowing he planned to abandon them forever. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw things. I wanted to grab him by his collar and demand to know how he could do this to his own children, but I smiled instead. I asked if he needed help packing for his trip. I played the supportive wife role I'd perfected over 8 years. He had no idea I knew everything. The next day, I did something I never thought I'd do. I went to see Amber. The gym was one of those trendy places with exposed brick and motivational quotes on the walls. Amber was teaching a spin class when I arrived. I stood in the back watching her through the glass wall. She was pretty in that generic Instagram way. Blonde highlights, perfect teeth, leggings that probably cost more than my scrubs. She was also very obviously pregnant, maybe 4 months along, showing enough that she couldn't hide it anymore. When the class ended, I waited outside the studio. She came out laughing with a client, her hand unconsciously resting on her small bump. Amber? I said. She turned. The smile dropped from her face the second she saw me. She knew who I was. Of course she did. I'm Melissa, I said calmly. Derek's wife. The client mumbled something and hurried away. Amber and I stood there in the middle of the gym, surrounded by the clang of weights and the hum of treadmills. "I don't know what he told you," she started, but I held up my hand. "I'm not here to fight," I said. "I'm here to warn you." Her perfectly microbladed eyebrows drew together. "Warn me about what?" "Derek is planning to fake his death this weekend. But here's the thing. It's insurance fraud. Federal crime. When he gets caught, and he will get caught, everyone involved goes down, including you." The color drained from her face. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do. You're carrying his baby. You think you're moving to Costa Rica together. You think you're getting a fresh start." I stepped closer. "But Derek doesn't do fresh starts. He runs. And when this plan fails, he'll throw you under the bus to save himself. He's a financial advisor, Amber. He knows exactly what he's doing, and he's setting you up to take the fall." "You're lying," she whispered. "Am I? Ask yourself why he's using fake documents in your name. Why the apartment lease in San Jose is in your name only. Why he's been so careful to keep his fingerprints off everything while making sure yours are everywhere." I could see it clicking in her head, the doubt creeping in. "You don't know him like I do," she said, but her voice wavered. "I know him better than anyone. I've known him for 12 years, and I know that when things go wrong, Derek always finds someone else to blame." I pulled out my phone and showed her a screenshot. "This is an email he sent to his buddy Mark 2 weeks ago. Read it." She took the phone with shaking hands. The email was Derek talking about his exit strategy and how he'd covered his bases by making sure everything pointed back to the girl, if authorities got involved. Amber looked like she might throw up. "He wouldn't. He loves me. He told me he loved me too. On our wedding day, when our daughters were born, last week over pancakes." I took my phone back. Love is just a word Derek uses to get what he wants. And right now what he wants is to disappear with $2 million in insurance money without going to prison. "What do you want from me?" she asked, and now there were tears in her eyes. "I want you to understand what you're involved in. I want you to know that you have a choice. You can go along with his plan and end up in a federal prison, or you can walk away now and save yourself. I'm having his baby. I know, and that baby deserves a mother who's not in prison for fraud." She stood there, her hand on her stomach, and I could see her whole world shifting. Everything Derek had told her, every promise he'd made, was turning to ash in her mind. "I need to think," she finally said. "You have until Saturday. That's when he's staging the accident." I turned to leave, then stopped. "One more thing. If you decide to talk to him about this conversation, he'll convince you I'm lying. He'll tell you I'm crazy, that I'm jealous, that I'm trying to manipulate you. He's very good at that. So maybe don't tell him we talked. Maybe just watch what he does over the next few days. See if his actions match his words." I left her standing there and drove home with my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. I didn't know if she'd listen. I didn't know if it mattered, but I'd planted a seed of doubt, and that was enough. That night, Derek's phone rang at dinner. He glanced at the screen, turned it over, and kept eating. It rang again 5 minutes later, and again. "Aren't you going to get that?" I asked innocently. "It's just work stuff," he said. "I'll deal with it later." It was Amber. I knew because I'd been monitoring his phone remotely. She'd called him 17 times in 2 hours. He hadn't answered once. After dinner, he went to the garage to organize camping gear. I heard him on the phone, his voice low and urgent. When he came back inside, he looked stressed. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, fine. Just some client stuff." Liar. The next morning was Friday, one day before the planned accident. I woke up early and found Derek already dressed, making coffee. "I'm heading out early today," he said. "Need to get some supplies for the trip." "Sure," I said. "Drive safe." He kissed my cheek and left. I waited 10 minutes, then I followed him. He didn't go to a camping supply store. He went to a Starbucks on the other side of town. Amber was waiting in the parking lot, sitting in her car. Derek got in the passenger seat. I parked 2 rows back and watched. They talked for 45 minutes. I couldn't hear anything, but I could see body language. Derek was animated, gesturing a lot. Amber was crying. At one point, she shoved him. He grabbed her hands, pulled her close, kissed her. She pulled away, shook her head, got out of the car. Derek sat there alone for a long time before driving away. I followed Amber instead. She drove to a strip mall and went into a storefront law office. She was inside for 90 minutes. When she came out, she looked different, resolved. I didn't know what she'd done in there, but something had shifted. I went home and waited. Derek came back that evening with bags from REI, new camping gear he'd never use. He spent the night packing, checking his list twice, acting like a man about to go on a weekend trip with friends, not a man about to abandon his family forever. I helped him pack. I folded his clothes. I reminded him to bring his allergy medication. I played my role perfectly. That night in bed, he wrapped his arms around me. "I love you," he whispered into my hair. "I love you too," I lied back. Saturday morning came too fast and too slow at the same time. Derek was up at dawn. He loaded his car with all his gear. He kissed the girls goodbye. They were still half asleep, barely aware of what was happening. He kissed me on the front porch. "I'll call you when I get there," he said. "Have fun." I said, "Be safe." He smiled, got in his car, and drove away. I watched until his taillights disappeared around the corner. Then I went inside, poured myself a cup of coffee, and waited for phase 2 of my plan to begin. At 10 a.m., my phone rang. It was Jason. "He just arrived at the river," my brother said. "He's got the kayak. There's another car in the lot. Gray Honda. Registered to Amber Patterson. Is she there?" "Not yet. But Derek's been on his phone constantly. Looks nervous. Keep watching." At 10:30, Amber arrived. I wasn't there, but Jason sent me photos in real time. Amber getting out of her car. Derek approaching her. Them standing apart talking. Her shaking her head. Him reaching for her. Her stepping back. At 11, Jason called again. "Melissa, something's happening. There are cops here. 2 squad cars just pulled pulled into the parking lot. What? My heart started racing. This wasn't part of my plan. They're approaching Derek and Amber now. Derek's being handcuffed. Amber's talking to one of the officers, showing them something on her phone. Derek looks panicked. I sat down hard on the couch. What's going on? I don't know. But wait, another car just pulled up. Looks like a detective's vehicle. Plainclothes guy getting out. He's got a badge. My phone buzzed. Another call coming in. Unknown number. Jason, I have to go. Keep watching and call me back. I switched lines. Hello? Mrs. Dawson? This is Detective Martinez with the county sheriff's office. I need you to come down to the station. It's about your husband. My mouth went dry. What happened? Is he okay? He's fine. He's in custody. I'll explain when you get here. The line went dead. I grabbed my purse, called my mom to watch the girls, and drove to the police station with my mind racing. What had Amber done? At the station, Detective Martinez met me in the lobby. He was in his 50s, gray hair, tired eyes. He looked like he'd seen everything. Mrs. Dawson, thank you for coming in. Please follow me. He led me to a small interview room, coffee-stained table, uncomfortable chairs, a mirror on one wall that was obviously two-way glass. Your husband has been arrested, Martinez said, sitting across from me. Insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and identity theft. I let my face show shock. What? I don't understand. Mrs. Amber Patterson came to us yesterday with evidence that your husband was planning to fake his own death to collect insurance money. She provided text messages, financial records, and recordings of their conversations. She's cooperating fully with our investigation. My mind was spinning. Amber had gone to the police, not to a lawyer, to the police. She'd beaten me to it. I had no idea, I whispered, which was technically true. I'd had no idea she'd go to the authorities. We know, Martinez said gently. We've looked into your finances. Your husband has been moving money without your knowledge. We've frozen all his accounts. We're working with your insurance company to make sure you're protected. Can I see him? Not right now. He's being processed. But Mrs. Dawson, I need to ask you some questions. Did you have any knowledge of his plans? I looked Martinez in the eye. I knew he was having an affair. I found out a few weeks ago. But I didn't know about this, about the fraud, about any of it. Another technical truth. I'd known, but I could prove I'd only found out recently. I had the recording from the pocket dial. I had the evidence Jason had gathered. I was covered. Martinez asked me questions for another hour. I answered everything honestly. I showed him the recording from the pocket dial. I gave him access to my phone, my email, everything. By the time I left the station, it was late afternoon. Derek was being held without bail. Amber was under investigation but cooperating. And I was officially a victim, the perfect victim. I drove home in a daze, not quite believing it had worked, not quite believing Amber had done my job for me. My phone rang. It was Rebecca, my lawyer friend. Melissa, I just got a call from the DA's office. They want to interview you about Derek's case. I just talked to the police. This is different. They're building a criminal case. They need you to testify. About what? About the marriage, the finances, your husband's behavior. They want to establish pattern of deception. Okay, there's more. The DA told me that if Derek goes to trial and is convicted, you might be entitled to sue for damages, fraud, intentional infliction of emotional distress, breach of fiduciary duty. We're talking potentially millions. I pulled over to the side of the road. Millions? Plus the house is in both your names. But if he's convicted of fraud, you could potentially get it entirely in the divorce. Same with his retirement accounts. And his life insurance policy won't pay out because of the fraud, but you could sue the insurance company to void it and get your premiums back. What about Amber? She's cooperating. She might avoid charges if she fully testifies against Derek. Smart move on her part. After I hung up, I sat in my car for a long time. Amber had saved herself. In doing so, she'd destroyed Derek completely. I'd wanted to be the one to do it. I'd planned every detail. But in the end, she'd beaten me to it. And I wasn't even mad. 3 days later, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. It's Amber. I pulled my car over again. I seem to be doing that a lot lately. Hi, I said carefully. I know you probably hate me, she started. I don't hate you. I'm sorry. For everything. For the affair. For getting pregnant. For being stupid enough to believe his lies. Why did you go to the police? She was quiet for a moment. Because of what you said. About him setting me up. I went to a lawyer that day, and she showed me the paper trail. Everything was in my name. The apartment lease. The bank account in Costa Rica. Even the fake IDs. They had my name on them, not his. He'd been planning to blame me the whole time. So you turned him in. I turned us both in. I told them everything. I gave them all the evidence. The lawyer said if I cooperated, I might avoid prison time. Probation maybe. Community service. I have a baby to think about now. What are you going to do? I'm moving back to my parents' place in Ohio. I'm going to have this baby and figure out my life. Derek wants nothing to do with us now. He told his lawyer the baby isn't even his. Of course he did. I'm sorry, Amber said again. I know it doesn't mean anything, but I am. You didn't deserve this. Your kids didn't deserve this. No, I agreed. They didn't. For what it's worth, you were right about him. About everything. He doesn't love anyone but himself. After we hung up, I sat there thinking about betrayal and karma and how sometimes the universe handles revenge better than we ever could. Derek's trial was scheduled for 6 months later. In the meantime, I filed for divorce. My lawyers drafted papers that would give me everything. The house, the kids, full custody, child support, alimony. Derek's lawyer tried to fight it, but it was hard to argue for your rights when you were in jail for fraud. The day the divorce was finalized, I took Emma and Riley out for ice cream. They didn't understand everything that was happening. I'd told them their dad had made some mistakes and had to go away for a while. They were sad, but kids are resilient. We ate our ice cream in the park, and Riley asked me if Daddy was ever coming home. I don't know, baby, I said honestly, but we're going to be okay. I promise. Are you sad? Emma asked. Sometimes, I said, but mostly I'm relieved. What's relieved mean? It means I'm not worried anymore. It means we're safe. They seemed to accept this and went back to their ice cream. Derek's trial lasted 3 weeks. I testified for 2 days. I told them about the pocket dial, about finding the evidence, about the money he'd hidden, about Amber and the baby, and the fake death plan. I watched Derek the whole time I was on the stand. He wouldn't look at me. He stared at the table, his jaw clenched, his hands folded. The jury deliberated for 6 hours, guilty on all counts. He got 8 years in federal prison. The judge ordered him to pay restitution to the insurance company, to me, to Amber. His assets were seized. His financial advisor license was revoked. His reputation was destroyed. Everything he'd built, everything he'd worked for, gone. Just like he'd planned to do to us. I didn't feel triumphant when the verdict came down. I felt tired, empty, ready to move on. But there was one more thing I needed to do. 6 months after Derek went to prison, I got a letter from him. It was forwarded through my lawyer. In it, he apologized. He said he'd made terrible mistakes. He said he understood why I hated him. He said he hoped someday the girls would forgive him. He didn't ask for forgiveness for himself. He didn't make excuses. He just apologized. I read the letter 3 times. Then I put it in a file box with all the other documents from our divorce. Maybe someday I'd show it to Emma and Riley. Maybe not. Then I did something I'd been planning for months. I took the insurance money that I'd been awarded in the lawsuit against Derek. Not the fake death policy that had been voided. But I'd sued him for the money he'd stolen from our accounts. And I'd won $300,000. I could have kept it, used it for the house, for the kids' college funds, for myself. But I didn't. I split it in half. I kept half for Emma and Riley's education, and I sent half to Amber. My lawyer thought I was crazy. Rebecca called me and said, "Melissa, you don't owe her anything. She slept with your husband." I know, I said. But she also saved us. If she hadn't gone to the police, Derek might have pulled it off. We might have spent years thinking he was dead. The girls would have grown up without a father and without the truth. She did the right thing in the end. She's pregnant with his baby, which means that kid is Emma and Riley's half-sibling, and that kid deserves a chance at a decent life, even if its father is garbage. Rebecca was quiet for a moment. "You're a better person than I am." "No," I said. "I'm just tired of being angry." I sent the money to Amber with a note. It said, "For the baby. Good luck." She called me a week later, crying. "Why would you do this?" she asked through tears. "Because we both got screwed by the same person. Because you could have stayed quiet and let him destroy both of us. Because your baby deserves better than what Derek would have given them. I don't deserve this. Maybe not. But your kid does." We talked for an hour that day. It was strange and awkward, and surprisingly healing. We weren't friends. We'd never be friends. But we had an understanding. She had her baby 4 months later. A girl. She named her Sophie. She sent me a photo. I showed it to Emma and Riley and told them they had a little sister out there somewhere, and maybe someday they'd meet her. They were curious but not upset. Kids process things differently than adults. A year after the trial, I went on my first date. A doctor from the hospital named Marcus. He knew my whole story. Everyone in town knew my whole story. But he asked me out anyway. We went to dinner. We talked about everything except Derek. It was nice. We went on a second date, and a third. And eventually, Marcus met Emma and Riley. He was patient with them, kind. He didn't try to be their dad. He just tried to be a good person in their lives. 2 years after Derek went to prison, Marcus and I got married. Small ceremony. Just family and close friends. Emma and Riley were flower girls. They wore matching dresses and scattered petals down the aisle, giggling the whole time. Derek sent a letter from prison congratulating me. I didn't respond. Marcus adopted the girls a year later. They kept Derek's last name but added Marcus's as a second last name. Their choice. Derek got out of prison after serving 6 years. He violated parole within 3 months and went back for another 2 years. When he got out the second time, he was a different person. Broken. Humbled. He'd lost everything. His career, his family, his freedom, his reputation. He asked to see Emma and Riley. They were 12 and 10 by then. I let them decide. They said yes. We met at a park. Neutral ground. Marcus stayed with me while Derek talked to the girls on a bench 50 feet away. I watched them, my stomach in knots, ready to intervene if needed. But Derek just listened. The girls talked, and he listened. He didn't make excuses. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He just listened. After an hour, they came back to us. Emma hugged me tight. Riley asked if we could get ice cream. Was it okay? I asked them in the car later. He seems sad, Emma said. Is he still our dad? Riley asked. Biologically, yes, I said carefully. But Marcus is your dad too. You can have both if you want. Or just one. It's up to you. They decided they wanted to see Derek once a month. Supervised visits. Marcus went with them sometimes. Other times, my mom did. I never went. I didn't need to see Derek anymore. That chapter of my life was closed. But here's the thing nobody tells you about betrayal and revenge and moving on. It's not like the movies. There's no triumphant moment where everything feels resolved. There's no perfect ending where the bad guy gets exactly what he deserves, and you ride off into the sunset feeling vindicated. Real life is messier than that. Derek lost everything. Yes, but he's still alive. He's still the father of my children. He's still part of our story, even if he's not part of our daily lives. Amber raised Sophie in Ohio. We exchange Christmas cards now. The girls FaceTime with Sophie sometimes. It's weird, but it works. Marcus is a good man. He loves me and the girls. We're building a new life together. But sometimes, late at night, I still think about that pocket dial, about the moment everything changed, about how close Derek came to actually pulling off his plan, and I think about the fact that he didn't get caught because I was smart or because I outmaneuvered him. He got caught because the other woman he was using decided she didn't want to be used anymore. Amber saved us both, and maybe that's the real ending to this story. Not revenge, not justice, not even karma, just one woman refusing to be a victim, and in the process, saving another woman from the same fate. We didn't plan it. We didn't coordinate it. We weren't friends or allies. But in the end, we both chose ourselves. We both chose survival over complicity. And Derek chose nothing. He gambled everything on a plan that required everyone else to be stupider than him. And he lost. Last I heard, he's working at a call center making minimum wage. He lives in a studio apartment. He takes the bus to his parole meetings. He sees his daughters once a month at a supervised facility. He tells people he made mistakes. He doesn't tell them he tried to fake his own death to escape his family and collect $2 million in insurance money. That story would make him sound worse than he wants to sound. But I know the truth. Emma and Riley know the truth. Amber knows the truth. Sophie will know the truth when she's old enough. And Derek has to live with the fact that everyone who matters knows exactly who he is. That's not the revenge I planned, but it's the one I got. And somehow, it's enough. 3 years ago, my husband tried to disappear. He tried to become a ghost, a memory, a tragedy. Instead, he became a cautionary tale. And me, I became the woman who survived him. That's my story. No moral, no lesson, just the truth. Sometimes the worst thing someone can do to you is the best thing that ever happened to you. Because if Derek hadn't betrayed me, I'd still be married to him. I'd still be living a lie. I'd still be trapped in a relationship with a man who valued money more than his own children. Instead, I'm free. The girls are happy. Marcus is a wonderful partner. We have a life full of normal, boring, beautiful moments. And Derek has prison stories and regrets. I know which life I'd choose, every single time.